for such a beautiful introduction. I'm immensely grateful for your kind words. Good evening, everyone. I hope and I endeavor to make this session as much as informative I can for you. So what I have tried is I have tried to give example for every step because completing my PhD, one thing which I've learned is this journey of completing your doctorate of philosophy is something which will open your awareness avenues and knowledge avenues. So yes, writing a PhD thesis is something which is very, 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 close to your heart, and especially for those who are getting into this process. I hope I help you out with some tips and tricks that, came handy to me when I wrote my PhD thesis. So here are let us start with the presentation. So before starting, is the screen visible to everyone?
Yes, ma'am, it's visible. Ma'am, can you just turn it to full screen mode, ma'am?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it a full screen mode? I've turned it into a full screen mode.
No, ma'am.
I'll just turn it again.
Okay.
Okay.
Ma'am, no problem, ma'am. We can continue, ma'am.
I'll just try once more if the full screen mode can come.
Okay.
Because my over here it is showing as a full screen mode.
No, ma'am.
I'll just complete over here. I'll just get to this step. Okay. Yeah. I hope this is now a full screen mode.
No, ma'am. It's in the same. But it's not a problem, ma'am. We can continue. It's visible, ma'am.
Is it visible now? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So before starting, the first step is to define what is in brief a PhD thesis. Now, this definition is given by Phillips and Perk, but in journal, PhD thesis is something which we analyze, an original contribution to the knowledge, a study we conduct on by ourselves on a topic or on a domain that we find interesting. So a doctoral thesis is a substantial and original contribution. So the main part of PhD thesis is it has to be an original contribution to the knowledge, demonstrating the candidate's ability to conduct independent research. So your thesis, your language of thesis, your quality of thesis will determine how good as a researcher you are, right? And how independently you can work further when it comes to research and when it comes to contributing to the literature. Analyze findings critically and present them in a coherent and scholarly manner. So see, people, we do data analysis, we write research methodology, but for a reader who's going to read your PhD thesis or who's going to see your PhD thesis, the most important thing is how organizedly or how much in a systematic way you are presenting your PhD thesis, so that the reader, that how much interest you are able to arouse in your PhD thesis, that is going to determine how effective your PhD thesis is. So the number one step before starting our PhD thesis is to decide what topic we are going to do our research on. So these are some of the parameters or some of the things we need to keep in mind while deciding upon the topic. The first and foremost is the area of our interest. Which interest, which area we want to study in. When I started my PhD, I knew I wanted to study something related to finance, but I was very clear that I don't want to go for very core finance. I want something related to finance, but something which is of a common topic which can be understood by people. So I took up a topic of financial literacy, right? Then relevance. What is the relevance of your topic in current times? Right? When I started my PhD, there was very less work which was being done in financial literacy. But that was something, a domain which was coming up. SBI came into this, RBI came up with this financial inclusion program. SBI was coming up as a part, SBI was coming up various, developing various manuals in which they could, what would you say, give knowledge to the normal consumer or a normal citizen about various financial things. So that is why that aroused my interest. Okay, if if the apex bank of India or if the government of the country is getting into this topic or is accelerating the importance of the topic, the importance of the this content, that how important it is to have financial knowledge, then let us work on this research gap. You have to figure out that whether your topic is filling the research gap which is there, or you are already repeating what has been done, right? Feasibility, taking, choosing a flamboyant topic is very easy, but you have to be very practical that whether or not would you be able to conduct the research on that. Is it practically possible to conduct the research on the topic that you are deciding? Or you are just deciding it because, it will sound very good when I will tell somebody, I did a PhD and my research title was this. The thing you have to keep in mind is whether you will be able to complete it or not. Clarity, you should have a clarity about the topic. If you wanted to say, I wanted to do in financial literacy, so it was very important for me to understand what is financial literacy. Is it, and what are the domains and what are the parameters that I'm going to take into account when I'll be evaluating financial literacy of my respondents. Then your supervisor's expertise. See, we know this very easy. This is a very important aspect of any PhD scholar. Your supervisor. He is the one who's going to sail your boat around. So it is important that your supervisor should have an expertise on the topic which you want to study in. Then availability of literature, and finally originality. What contribution will your PhD thesis will bring to the literature that is already there in the research environment? So what are you going to add to that? So that is something which we need to take care of. Thesis title. Setting now, so we decided we want to do this topic. So now we have to frame a title around that topic. So there are three qualities of the research title that whenever you decide a research title, you have to be clear about three things: how clear the title is, how specific it is, and how reflective it is. That your title must be able to show what the research is all about, what you are studying, what you are researching. Okay, and it should be very concise and informative. Concise doesn't mean that you make it a very short sentence and people are not able to understand what actually you are studying. So it has to be. Hello.
Ma'am, your slide is moving, ma'am.
What is it?
Yeah, yes, ma'am. Yes,
Is it
ma'am.
now? Is it okay? Okay. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So is it visible now?
Yes, ma'am. It's visible, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. So your title has to be very concise, but it has to be very informative. You cannot make a very short title and you can say, okay. It has to be a title which is easily understandable to everybody who is going to it. So I have few examples of the title that you can, take into account. So these are some of the things like sustainable business practices and their effect on consumer buying behavior in retail industry. So this title, although it is very concise, but it is telling you that what the research will all be about. So right. The third title, this was my PhD thesis title, Financial Literacy Levels and its Impact on Subsequent Financial Behavior Amongst Salaried Female Individuals in Ludhiana City. So this title has to tell everyone, the reader, that okay, this is was the study. This the study. If we are studying some research or if we are about to start reading the research, so this research is about all this thing. Okay, then comes the first step of your PhD thesis process, which is developing a research proposal. Key components of research proposal. So these are your components on which you're gonna, make your research proposal, which will be, starting from abstract to introduction. Introduction, very brief introduction, aims and objectives, background significance, literature review, research design and methodology, research questions, suppositions and implications, conclusion and bibliography. We will be discussing these things when we will be discussing the chapters of PhD thesis. So this is just to give you an idea that what components should a research proposal have. Now, structuring a PhD thesis. When we say about structuring a PhD thesis, then it is to say what all we need to cover. So your PhD thesis will start from problem definition. We'll move to literature review where you're going to study what already has been studied on your topic. Then you will be choosing the research design, which will include your methodology, your qualitative data, quantitative data, the research design you're pulling an experimental design, you are going for descriptive design, what are the research tools you are engaging in. Then you create a hypothesis, that is what you're going to test. Then executing the research, then will come data collection method. You're going to go for primary data or you're going to go for secondary data collection. Finally, the main part, which is the data analysis part, right? Analyzing what we have collected from our respondents. And finally, discussion of results. We are going to tell what results we have found out and we're going to discuss that. So this is a basic overview of the structure or sorry, so this is in this way, this is basically, an overview of what things a PhD thesis would cover. So getting started with thesis. So these are the basic pointers that came into mind. When these were the things which I followed. So these tips I'm going to share it with you. Prepare an outline. First thing is you have to prepare an outline of the entire thesis. You have to prepare a tentative chapter plan that, okay, these are my chapters. These are the tentative chapters that I'll be covering in my PhD thesis. And apart from that, you have to, you need to make a list of all the major sections that you're going to cover in every chapter. For example, if you're starting with your introduction chapter, so in introduction, what background you're going to give, or a section could be what recent survey about your study is there. See, for example, you're doing a study on green marketing practices in India. So, what any recent survey by a certified organization that has been conducted on green marketing, you know, uh, techniques that are being followed by the companies in India, that can come into account. That can make a major section. So, it is very important for you to make those major sections and to list those major sections when you're going to make table of contents of your thesis. Because the first thing a reader would see in your PhD thesis would be a table of contents that, oh, okay, these are the things that the researcher has done. Then discuss this outline with your supervisor. Okay, and then you are now going to do one thing is, for initially you're going to prepare an outline for the entire thesis. Now the term is for every chapter, prepare a separate outline which will have details about data, about the tables you're going to put in, about the figures you're going to put in, and you're going to arrange them in an order which makes a sense, which shows a relationship. Okay, first step, I found this. Then second step, I found this. Third table shows, okay, now this can be, inferred or interpreted. And finally, you go start writing. And when you start writing, do one chapter at a time. Do not rush. Okay, I have to do this chapter also. I'll be simultaneously doing every chapter. No, 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 no. It's a big no. Do with one chapter. Start with one chapter, finish it off, and then you start with the second chapter. Right? And thing that helped me out was start with an easier one. Because it is going to be a very long journey of writing that thesis. So it is important that you start with easier one and then you gradually move to a tougher one. Number one, so now it comes to your thesis part. So the start of any thesis is the introduction chapter. So introduction will
kindly move the slides, ma'am.
Kindly, what should I do?
Ma'am, you should move the slide, ma'am.
I am already moving it. Is introduction slide visible?
Ma'am, it's there in the 6th slide.
Is it now?
Yeah. Yes, ma'am, it's changed.
Oh, okay. Right, it is slide number 8 now, right?
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
Okay, is it clear now?
Yes, ma'am, it's visible, ma'am.
Oh, okay. So the first chapter is your introduction chapter, which will tell you about what background information you have on your topic, right? It's going to your research problem being defined and its importance. And these are the 5 things that it should contain. Number 1, what do we know about the topic, right? And what we don't know, right? The research gap. That is very important part of introduction chapter. What do we intend to study? research objectives, and tentative chapter plan. Now, there are different universities have different parameters. In some universities, the guidelines is you have to show your objectives in the introduction chapter only, while certain universities, you can have a separate chapter of objectives of your study. So that will be depending upon the university guideline that you have. So this is a normal example of what the introduction chapter should start with. You cannot directly start with defining your topic. For your introduction chapter to start, the first and the foremost step is you have to have an engaging opening, right? So this is certain example of what I have, this is for your reference that this can be an engaging opening so that, people are interested to further read it. Then to start, second part of introduction would be you have to give a background knowledge of what topic you're going to study so that the reader gets a little idea about what topic you are talking about, right? And finally, your introduction chapter should also state your research problem. Now, one of the things which is very important for introduction chapter is if it is available for your topic, do try to give certain survey results which are related to your topic, right? Whenever whatever domain you are studying in, do figure out certain survey results which are done by good, organization like OECDs, IMF, any world-renowned, global organizations like World Bank, or any particular credible organization in your domain. Like for medical, you can, for engineering, IEEE का कुछ हो रहा है survey अगर आ रहा है, तो you can go for that survey का results. For management, we have, OECD, economic background can also go for OECD, IMF, World Bank. So there are a number of good credible institutions. And if you can figure out certain survey results which are related to your topic, so it will add value to your introduction. Second thing in your introduction, what you can do is you can give an Indian scenario to your introduction. If you're doing a study in India or whatever country you're doing your study in, do give your country's particular scenario. Like for example, if my study was financial literacy, so I made it a point that in my introduction chapter, I gave a proper section for what current scenario of financial literacy in India is. So that, okay, people are prepared. Okay, it sets a base for your research. Okay. Then comes the second chapter, which is literature review, right? So literature review, it basically tells you the summary or analyzes the existing research on your particular topic. Why it is important? Because it is, number one, it already, it shows what already has been done on the topic that you're going to researching about. Then it secondly, and the most important thing it will help you is it will help you to identify the gaps that your research can fill or you can aim to fill. Would provide a strong foundation for your study, and it helps to avoid repeating previous mistakes that has been done, because when you study limitations of initial studies or the previous studies that has been done on your topic, you try to avoid those mistakes and you learn from those mistakes. And another thing which help you, or another tip for writing a literature review chapter and presenting it into your PhD thesis defense would be make a comparison of the studies that have been done on your topic and what different results those studies have found out. So this is something which is very important. You don't just list the studies. If you can make it in your PhD thesis defense presentation, do provide a table or do segregate your literature reviews into different results they have shown. Somebody has shown positive results, or what studies have shown neutral results, the studies that have shown negative results, do segregate them so that there can be a comparison of literature that can be done. Okay? So this is again an example of what literature review should include. So if you are basically researching the impact of social media on mental health, say for example, so your literature review, number one, will summarize the studies on how social media affect the mental health, will compare different viewpoints from the experts and identify the gaps. So for example, in this case, we can say that only there are few studies who are focusing on teenagers. So now we are doing this study on teenagers. right? And show how your research will add to new knowledge. So you at the end you can say, as we can see, no, this is the research gap from literature review. It is clear that this is the research gap. So my study or our study is aimed at filling up that gap with the new knowledge. Okay, then comes the next chapter, which is the research methodology chapter, which in short will tell a glimpse of your entire research, what you're going to do, whom you're going to study. So a strong research methodology, it has to be very clear, justified, replicable to ensure credibility. Now, replicability is very important. It is important for another researcher who's going to work on a similar topic as yours to actually take reference from your research methodology and apply in the apply in his or her own research and can get a credible solution. So your research methodology chapter would have these things. One first would be research design, which will tell us that what overall approach towards research we'll be having. We'll be doing qualitative, we'll be going for quantitative data, or we'll be mixed things, right? Second would be data collection methods. How we gonna collect the data? If it is primary data we're going targeting, we'll be doing it through questionnaires, or are we going to study the already available literature in the market? Are we going to take case studies, or are we going for experiment? Then sampling strategy. What sample are you going to calculate? What are the participants to your research? Who are the respondents of your research? Right? And from where will you get those respondents, and how will you get those respondents will come under your sampling strategy. That is random sampling of 200 university students. So here it is clear. Technique is random sampling. Your sample is 200 and your population is university students. So it is important for you to mention these things. Finally, how will you analyze your data? What software are you going to use? Are you going to use SPSS? Okay, you're going to go for MOs. Where are you going? What techniques and tools you're going to use for your data analysis. Then ethical consideration. Your data, your PhD thesis has to have an ethical consideration in the terms of saying how are you able to maintain the privacy of your respondents, and how you do your research while taking a due consent from your respondent. It should not be due to any influence or any something. Your respondents should give you their response, if by their own consent. It should not be forced, and the identity of your respondents has to be anonymous. You cannot in any case you know make it visible to any other person. So it is very important to make your research respondents very confidential, right? And finally, limitation. You have to specify what your limitations were, so that the other researcher or the other person who's going to research on your topic can learn from those limitations and can remove those limitations when he or she is going for the research this time.
Ma'am, please move the slides, ma'am.
They move. I don't know why they stop in between, because they're continuously moving from my side. I'll just, right? Are they moving now?
Yes, ma'am. It's there in data collection techniques. Yeah.
Yeah, data collection techniques. So when we talk about data collection techniques, again, we can categorize into two categories. One would be your primary data collection. Other would be your secondary data collection. Primary data, as it says, it's going to be the first data you're going to collect it. It is not available there. You're going to get it through your, questionnaires or surveys or polls or interviews, focus groups. So these are the ways you're going to get your primary data. Secondary data, as the name suggests, it is the data that is already available in the form of financial reports, sale reports, government reports. What are the mission and vision statements, or the best, the most popular of them all, internet. So these are the text that would determine. So that would be dependent on what study you have. Your study is primary data based or secondary data based. So that would again depend upon what topic you have decided, what domain you have decided to work in. Then best practices for data analysis would be, number one would be use the right software. Whatever analysis see, data analysis is one of the, it is clearly the most important chapter, not only in your PhD thesis, but in your PhD journey. So this chapter is to be in a form best way, right? So certain best practices that we can, follow for effective data analysis would be number one, choose right software. Choose a software you are aware of that how to use it. Just don't go by a name. Okay, that's the second, somebody is using MOS. I will also use MOS, although I don't know how to use MOS. No, if you are not able to use MOS, don't use it. Or if you want to use MOS, have a detailed knowledge about it, right? Then, if you want to go for SPSS, have a good knowledge and a command on SPSS before using it. Because unless and until you know how to use a certain software, you will not be able to get the analysis that you want for your research. So it is very important for you to not only choose the right software, but be aware of that software, right? Then ensure data accuracy. If there is any error in your questionnaire or if there is any missing value in your questionnaire, you have to eliminate that response because you cannot take incomplete questionnaires and you cannot journalize them with completed questionnaires. There is a difference and you have to maintain that difference, right? Visualize data clearly. You have collected the data, you have the raw data. Now it is very important for you to convert that data into an organized form which is meaningful. So for this, you have to use tables, charts, and graphs, and those table charts and graphs should be made in such a way that yes, they show the results that you have been you want to show. For example, you want to show a significance level. Your table should be done in a way that it shows this is the significance level. Then justify your choices. Whatever data analysis tools and techniques you are using it, you have to able, you should be able to justify them. Okay, if you're using ANOVA or if you're using chi-square test, you are able to tell, okay, for studying this relation, say if I'm studying my any of my financial, if I'm studying financial literacy and its relationship between demographics, I'm using chi-square, then I have to justify it why I'm using chi-square, why not some other test. So it is important for you to justify it and maintain transparency. For each and every table, you should clearly show what you have done, how you have done, so that others can learn from your research. So data analysis, when it comes to data analysis, it is of two types: quantitative data analysis and qualitative data analysis. Now, quantitative data analysis would have three things to do. One would be descriptive statistics, which would summarize your data. The techniques that would come under this would be mean, median, mode, all the journal descriptives we use, right? Then inferential statistics, which will help you in drawing the conclusion, which would include your tests like t-test, ANOVA, regression. Regression would help you to know what is the impact of one variable on other. If you are going to study more than one variable impacts, then you can go for multiple regression. You can see which variable has more impact, right? A chi-square test, which will help you in determining the relationship between different categories, right? And finally, hypothesis testing, which will come be shown through p-value, the significance value, that whether or not what hypothesis we were studying or testing, whether our research has shown a statistically significant impact or not, right? Then comes the qualitative data. So this is a little, a less used data because mostly the studies are based on quantitative data. So these are certain techniques which are not used mostly because mostly PhD thesis are or research work is done on quantitative data. So these are certain techniques that you can use if you're going for qualitative data, right? You can use thematic analysis, which can help you in finding out the patterns in data. For example, I've given, if we are having an interview about from students about the stress, so they may come up with common answer, okay, we have peer pressure is the problem or academic overload is the problem. Content analysis can help us to categorize certain things, right? So a study of news article may find that climate change appears in 70% of the reports. So this is going to give you a very categorized or a count. Okay, this is the category we are finding. Then again, discourse analysis and grounded theory. So these are certain techniques that can be used when it comes to qualitative data. Now, next chapter that comes after your data is analyzed, you come up with your results, right? So it is now important for you to actually discuss what you have found, right? So this chapter again will tell about your entire data analysis into a very clear way. Okay, so it will, number one, will have should have a very clear and precise language. Whatever interpretation you are writing, whatever you are interpreting from your data, whatever you are showing as result, it should be very logically written and very precisely written. You should avoid using various jargons, which are very flamboyant words or phrases, long phrases. No, be very precise, be very clear. You are doing a research, and research is very professional. There is no room for using jargons in research. So be very precise and very clear. Use headings and subheadings to structure the chapter logically. So it is very important whenever you're going to present results, make proper categories and subcategories. First category has defined it. Say, for example, if you're studying socio-economic or demographics impact on consumer buying behavior or consumer buying behavior. So you have to make proper category of what demographic have you studied. Okay, and if there is an impact, you can also, you have to also further, you can classify it where that result difference is coming. If there is a difference in, you know, on gender basis, okay, a female is having a different consumer behavior, buying behavior than a male, then you have to specify, okay, this is the thing, subcategorize it, okay, in woman and male also, this is the age group which is showing the difference. So you have to make a heading and subheading. Then you have to support your claims with the evidence. That means you have to give the data of everything. If you are giving, if you are presenting something, you have to have, evidence for that. Linking results to research questions and hypothesis. This is very important part. Whatever research question or hypothesis that your study was studying, your result should link to that with every, and your result should be according to the objectives of your study and the hypothesis you were testing. Each and your data, results should show, okay, these results should be the answer to your research questions. Avoid repetitions. Ensure figure tables and graphs are properly labeled and referenced. It is, which I have been seeing in recent times, and I'm quite, people do not take much care in, numbering the table, which can times lead to confusion. So it is very important for you to, properly number your table and make it a point that you're numbering it correctly, right? Because you're going to you're in your interpretation or in your results, you're going to mention the table number. So it is very important for you to make it a point that figure number and table numbers are correctly, labeled, and you are showing the same number in the interpretation, right? Presenting your findings. You have done with your data analysis, you have done with your results, you have discussed your results. Now the time comes when you're going to give your you present your findings. So findings के लिए सबसे पहले it is important that you have to structure your findings very logically. Your findings should be in the way of your objectives or your research question. First objective should be, your findings should communicate to first objective. Second objective, findings communicate to second objective. So the number of your objectives or the order of your objectives will determine how you're going to show or present your findings. Second, use clear and engaging visuals. So what if you are showing certain tables, or if you are, the way you're presenting your findings, it should be very engaging to the person who's going to read your findings, right? Provide a concise narrative. Be very brief and be very concise when you go, writing your findings. If your finding is like, if my study was impact of financial literacy and financial behavior, so it has to very clearly, in a very concise statement, it has to show whether or not significantly financial literacy levels are impacting the financial behavior of salaried females or not. So in a very concise statement, it has to write, it has to show. Compare findings with your previous research. Now this is up to you whether or not you want to show it. So it is good if you compare your findings with what previous research findings have been done, right? Then interpret unexpected or contradictory results. If you find, if you think that the findings that have or the results that have come are contradictory to what you were thinking would come, you see, you thought that a result would say that two variables are positively related, but they come out to be negative impact or negative, they have consequence. Then you have to clearly interpret that result. Okay, although previous studies say this, but my study has shown this. Discuss the limitations transparently, highlight the practical and theoretical implications, maintain clarity and simplicity, and end with a strong conclusion. Use a professional and engaging presentation style. So whosoever is going to see your PhD thesis will want a thesis which is very professionally and engagingly written and which is very easy and clear to understand. Right? Then comes the part writing a well-structured conclusion. So now this is part which everyone takes it very easily. Okay, oh, we have done with the research, we have done with the analysis part, we know the results, we know the findings, right? What is it? It is just a paragraph. I'm going to write the conclusion, make a small paragraph out of it and do it. But no, no, no. Sometimes this chapter is the most important chapter of your thesis because many a time a reader would directly go to your conclusion or a researcher would directly go to your conclusion. Okay, let me see what this study is concluding. So whenever you write conclusion, you have to be very clear that it is summarizing the key findings of your research because it has to give the major part of your conclusion should show what is the most important finding you have, you know, and it came out when you have done the research. What is your most important findings and critical findings should find a place in conclusion. Then it should reflect your research questions that these were the things that you were researching. It should also discuss the contributions that your research is going to make into the literature. You have to acknowledge the limitations also. Practically, how practically your research can be utilized if required for policy implications or can come, if what industry can get from your research and can be helpful to them. Okay. And what if any you put or any particular sector you're doing your research in, how that sector can be benefited from your research should be shown in your conclusion. And finally, your final thought. Okay, this is the research I have done. And this is in nutshell, you have to give in one paragraph. Okay, after all my due deliberation on research and data analysis, this is the thing I have found. Citations and references. Now, it is very important for us to cite and give proper credit to those resources we are using. Number one, it is important to give credit to the sources. Secondly, it helps us to avoid plagiarism. And third, it ensures academic integrity. So there are three things we need to keep in mind while we writing our citations and references. Number one is follow whatever your guidelines, university guidelines says or UGC guidelines that can be broadly followed. That, these are the citation styles you're going to follow. In-text citations are also important and what bibliography you are collecting. So these are basically, we are aware of these things. So these, number one is different citation styles, APA, MLA, Chicago manual style, Harvard referencing, IEEE. So these the citation style that you will adopt will depend upon what university guidelines gives you. Then it is very important for us whenever in text citations we are giving, we have to give that also according to the style we are following for the end references. If for end references we are following APA, then in text also we have to follow APA. It cannot be like in text we follow Harvard and at the end we'll be following APA. No, it has to be uniform, right? And finally,
Please change the slide, ma'am.
then create a well-formatted reference list and bibliography. So whatever bibliography, whatever research papers you have utilized, whatever journals you have utilized, it is important for you to mention the research papers according to the style of even, right? So every style they have very minute changes. For example, if you show in the style, slide, I've given an example. In APA style, whenever we refer, we write the reference, we write journal name in italics, then the author, first comes the author names, then in bracket we write the year of the paper, then the name of the research paper, journal's name, its volume, and pages. Forward style, if you say, it is a little bit similar, but the only difference we can say is in forward style, we write the name of the research paper in inverted commas, right? And we word in APA we do not mention PP word, but in Howard it is required for us to mention PP. Okay, page for page number we have to write PP and then give the page numbers. So it is very important for you to follow this, right? Now, once we are done with our entire thesis, the important roadblock that comes into account is plagiarism, because a good thesis is something which has the least amount of plagiarism that is possible. So it is imperative for us to make it into our account from the very start when we start writing our thesis, to keep this into our mind that yes, in every step, I'll be avoiding as much plagiarism as I can. So for that, there are certain tips that you can, follow. Number one is cite your sources properly. Whatever sources you are using, do cite them, do give credit to them. Then use quotation marks for direct quotes. If you are using anybody's quote, right? For example, if you're using Benjamin Franklin's quote that an investment in knowledge gives the best interest, so you have to give that quote in inverted commas, right? Use plagiarism detection tools. Your universities, they have credible, plagiarism tools. You must utilize those tools, and you make it. And a tip that that comes handy with this is, with every chapter, try, if it is possible for you, try to check plagiarism from the very start. Once you complete first chapter, introduction chapter, try to check the plagiarism. Then you do the second chapter, try to check the plagiarism, so that it helps you to keep plagiarism to a very low level, right? Then next would be paraphrase effectively. If you are using somebody else, uh, con- uh, uh, you know, if your content, then convert it into your words, right? Restructure them according to your own words. Make them your own, right? Maintain accurate notes wherever, wherever information you are finding, content you are finding, do make a note of them. Okay, this is the content, I found it from here. This is the way I can present it in my PhD thesis, right? Then avoid self-plagiarism. Now, do not use your previous work only. Okay, I did a research on this and I will again use it on this. No, avoid using your content. Your own content will also, your own previous content that has been published will also lead to plagiarism, right? Then understand the citation styles and give credit to the sources. Okay, then comes maintaining academic integrity. Now, academic integrity is what ethical codes and moral principles that guide the conduct of your research. It will, include your honesty, your fairness, trust and respect and responsibility. Upholding academic integrity means producing original work. See, for a very start of the PhD thesis, we give this, in written, that our work is original work. We are submitting, it is an original work. Now, if we say in the very start that it is an original work, make it the point that that work remains original, right? Give due credit to others' ideas and avoid any kind of deceit and plagiarism. Right? Now, for thesis writing, this is something which is very important, that how good you are at when it comes to managing your time, because we have a certain time period only in which we have to complete our research also, we have to do our data analysis also, we have to gather the data also, we have to apply statistical tools also, right? So the time techniques would be, number one would be set clear goals and milestones. You have to be very clear about the timeline you're going to follow when it comes to your writing of thesis. If you're saying that, okay, coming month, I'll be completing my introduction chapter, that means you need to complete your introduction chapter. If you say that in this week, I will study 15 research paper and get literature review out of that, then you should be able to, get literature reviews out of that. If you make it a point that no, I will be, testing my first hypothesis, I'll be analyzing the data related to my first research question or hypothesis, you must do it. Then, accordingly, you should also create your writing plan, structured writing plan. Okay, this in so many days I'll be completing this. In so many days I'll be, writing these chapters. Prioritize your task very effectively. Which has to be done, has to be done. जो चीज सबसे पहले जरूरी है उसको पहले करो, जो उसके बाद जरूरी है वो उसके बाद करो. Overcome delays and distraction. See, delays are part and parcel of your PhD thesis writing. So if there is a delay, do not let it that bog you down. Okay, I'm delayed my thesis, right? How will I do it? It will not be completed on time. No, you can do it. You can come back and you can, overcome any delay. Okay, maintain a consistent writing routine. It is very important. Now this point is very important. It is very important for you to do or to write everything daily, right? You have to write something, or a little paragraph or a table. Do it daily. Do not break this practice. Track progress and adjust plan. Make a plan. Track your progress. If your progress is going to that plan, very good. If it is not going, figure out where the adjustment is needed and do the adjustment as early as possible. Manage research and writing balance. It has to be, you cannot say, okay, I will do my data analysis first and then I will start writing my research, PhD thesis. No, you have to do the research part as well as do some writing part so that they cannot, you're able to coordinate easily between them. Then take breaks to avoid burnout. If, it is a very popular quote. We listen to them since our childhood. We are listening to it. All work, no play makes you dull. So do not overbog yourself. Do not, just go on doing and doing and doing it, because after some time your saturation point will come and the productivity will reduce. Seek feedback and stay accountable. Regularly seek feedback from your supervisor or from your friends who are reading it. Supervisor and friends, all your well wishers. And be accountable. If your supervisor says, okay, over here you did a wrong thing, be accountable to that fact. Okay, I did a wrong thing and I'll correct it. Right? You're done with your thesis. That time comes when you have to defend what hard work you have put in. So defending your thesis is the most critical aspect, because we have to give the entire thesis journey into a PowerPoint presentation, right? So सबसे पहला, the most important thing is you have to start preparing it early. Do not overstress. Start preparing early does not mean that you keep on starting, from the very start of your PhD journey. You try to stress yourself, okay, no, I have to defend my thesis. How will I defend my thesis? Right? So do not overstress. Start early, but don't overstress. Attend presentation by other candidates. Now, this would help you to understand, how to give a presentation. Number two, what questions can come up, right? Structure your presentation. Your presentation should be structured as well as your thesis is structured. So they should, it has to be according to the thesis, has to perform, follow a proper format. Create an impactful introduction. Whenever you start defending your thesis, the first thing that your evaluator is going to listen to you would be your introduction to the topic. So it has to be very impressive, right? Do not run through your presentation. Do not like, okay, my present, I have to finish it in so and so time, I have to complete it. No, do not run through it, and visualize yourself defending your presentation. See it, okay, I'm going to present my presentation like this. You can do it through mock presentation. You can give your mock presentation to your supervisor, to your family members, or to your friends in, an environment where you feel comfortable in. You can ask them to, ask questions from you, right? So, coming up, so what are the common mistakes you should avoid? Number one is you should avoid vague and unfocused research title or topic. Your topic and title has to be very clear. It should not be vague. Number two, poor methodology. Your methodology is poor if it is not giving you, if it is not giving the reader an idea about what your sample is, what your population is, how you will collect it, how you will, analyze it, what research design you will be following. Then poor writing style and formatting. It is very important for you. We find it very simple. Okay, नहीं नहीं writing style का क्या है? आराम से type कर लेंगे. We'll do it. It is going to have a great impact on how presentable your thesis would look. So whatever formats or fonts or font sizes or spacing or margins you are following, be very precise and very particular. Plagiarism, poor referencing and citations, properly cited. Do it in chronological order. If you are making a bibliography, do it in a chronological order. Weak data analysis. Weak data analysis is something which will not, you know, tell clearly that what this research is coming up with, whether what objectives have found, what hypothesis has resulted in. So a weak data analysis will never give a clear view on this. And finally, weak conclusion. As I told you earlier, that a conclusion chapter, although it sounds very easy, but it is not very easy to write it because it is a thing which is going to give a glimpse of your entire research thesis, right? So these are certain sources which you can, resources which you can, use for your further guidance. So you can just, these are some of, many of these things we are know about this. So what other, apart from these, you can join various data analytical groups that are available on Google. They're basic various, and or you can attend, various sessions on SPSS conducted by some good academies, right? So these things help you out in your PhD thesis. No doubt we find it okay what help they're going to get, but they certainly give you a very good help, to understand it. So this is at last, this is a journal, or a journal steps on writing PhD thesis in total, starting from understanding the requirements to finally preparing for your viva. So this is in precise the entire PhD journey or PhD thesis writing journey which I have, put in. Now, if anybody has any question, I would be more than happy to answer. And I hope I am able to, give certain knowledge or help you out in certain ways in your PhD thesis writing.